If you could just wave a magic wand and say, this is the person that I wanted to be, I was that person for a week in New Orleans.
Welcome to the Jeff Heilman Project. This has been a exciting new change for us. We're in our new studio. Our microphones have changed. We've entered into a new fiscal quarter. We're entering into a new season, summer. There's just so much beautiful. We most listened to a podcast recently, and the orator was talking about change and being open to change. I really loved what he said about how you can tell you can tell where a person is at based on their articles of clothing. Like what if you're you can tell when the last time they changed was by the way that they dress,
or when
they
stopped changing.
When they stopped changing is by the way
you
that
can look
they
at somebody's
dress.
clothing and find out when they stopped changing
Yeah.
and when they stopped growing as a person.
Exactly. And so that was really interesting because there's so many people that I can think of that it's like, oh wow, 1970 called, you might want to put some of that back.
Yeah,
but
Ted
hey,
Nugent.
I guess some people, if they wait long enough, it'll come back in style and they'll be trendy again. But
Ted Nugent called. He wants his shirt back.
His shirt back. So this is just, a refresher course. We're Jeff and Jessica Heilman. We've been married for 27 years. This July, it gets to be so long you forget when you got originally married. We have 7 children from the ages of 5 to 25, and we are just happy to have this intimate conversation. This is our couch. This is literally one of the couches that I brought from the living room out to the podcast room. This is our home. You are in our home. This is where we eat, breathe, sleep. If you're listening and not watching on YouTube, the whole idea of the Jeff Heilman Project came about because we have so much in our hearts that we want to be able to share. We have had so many questions over the years. How do you have 7 children? How does your wife stay home? How do you, as an entrepreneur, end up taking and handling the hits? And we get hit a lot. We were just having a conversation walking down the stairs about people who have a lot of faith, people who have a lot of responsibility, people who can take on the challenge of having 7 children, of being married and not getting divorced. It's like the bigger you get, the easier of a target you are to hit. And so the question is, how do you just keep getting hit and keep standing? And so those are the types of things that we talk about.
And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you fall down and you get a boo-boo.
Yeah, sometimes you do fall down.
And it hurts. You get a headache or a head blunt force trauma, and you have to go to ER.
And as much as I hate the saying of how can you tell a winner? Well, when they're down, kick them, and if they get back up. As much as I hate that saying because it is so rude, but a winner will always rise back up. I think part of what we're learning, being alive as long as we have been, not quite 50 yet, either of us, however, is that it's okay to say, ow, that hurt. I think when I was younger and I would get kicked and want to be a winner and just pop right back up, I wouldn't admit, hey, that hurt. And I think the older that I'm getting, the more I'm realizing, like, it's okay to acknowledge the pain. It's okay to say that hurt. I have a voice.
I'm going through something. I'm just going through a tough time.
Exactly.
I'm working through some issues.
Yes.
That's part of today.
And that's why we're here. And so if you have anything that you say, hey, I'm hurting, maybe Jeff and Jessica can help, please, we have a text number. You don't have to, it's a lot more, it's not, I feel like sometimes people, when they text other people, they feel like they're getting really personal because, ooh, it's a text. This is so personal. But this text line that we're putting at the bottom of the screen has been specifically created for you to send either anonymously or anything that you want to talk about or that you'd like to talk about. Please text us. That's what that line is dedicated for. We have business hours related to that. So it's not going to come in at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's not going to come in at 1 o'clock in the morning. They personally come to one of us or part of our team. So just please text us if you're going through anything. If you'd like us to talk about it, just say okay to share, OTS, okay to share, and we will talk about it here on the podcast. Or we'll respond
if it's not okay to share, and we'll try to get back to you.
And Andrew has a sound bite of me saying the number. I don't have it in front of me right now, but he'll play that, and we will have it through the audio podcast as well. So what we're going to talk about today, all of that aside, recently, you just got back from a trip. your first paid time off trip in
Long
a
time.
very long time.
Long time.
Where did you go? What did you do? What did you learn? Let us live vicariously, because those people that are listening right now do not have a visual or a B-roll of where you went and what it looked like. So tell us what it sounded like. Let us know what it smelled like.
Oh,
what
it's
did the
great.
food taste like? Please be descriptive.
Well, first of all, let's talk about timing, right? Because people, when you go on vacation, you got to time it right. And this was one of those seasons to where you had just gotten back from a trip.
Yes.
With Madeline, our oldest daughter. It was a girls' trip. You'd been gone for about 4 or 5 days.
Shout out to Mosaic and Disneyland and the Huntington Library.
And the Huntington Library, yeah. And we go on libraries. I mean, we're cool. We go to libraries on vacation.
That's relevant.
We go to museums and cool. And the buildings, the architecture, the money that goes into the building, these buildings is incredible. So I wanted to get away for a few days, and I just finished a fiscal year at work and had been just burning the midnight oil for about almost 15 months straight with really no breaks. You get a week shut down at Christmas and a week at 4th of July, but those are family-oriented things, and with the holidays, there's a lot of work involved in the holidays, so it's not really a vacation.
No.
Excuse me. And
not with 7 kids.
No, I mean, it's a fun trip, and you're creating family memories, and it's certainly valuable, but we went to Disneyland in December, and I worked every day on that trip, and then we had the shutdown during Christmas and New Year's, and we were traveling for that, so there's work getting down to Southern California. So this was a trip for myself, just a trip to go and relax and go to one of my favorite cities in the world is New Orleans. And I like going when it's hot. I grew up going to the South in the summertime. And I feel like if I don't get that sense of hot, humid, poolside vacation for at least a week a year.
You used to tell me it's not summer if I don't have to take 3 showers a day.
Yeah, that's 3 shower days, right? And so I went to New Orleans, and I got to do all kinds of fun stuff. I didn't get to the swamp tour. That was my one thing I wanted to do. I wanted to do my flat bottom boat, one of the fan boat swamp tours, and I didn't get to do that. But I did a bunch of things, which we'll talk about a little in here, not the least of which was N.O.M.A, the New Orleans Museum of Fine Art.
Is that where the Jackson Pollock
That was where, they've got a Jackson
and they had
Pollock painting.
Eames chairs there.
They had Eames, some of the original.
You know how I love my furniture.
Where they apparently they get the wood, they steam it, they get pliable plywood. It's really thin and pressed. I don't know how they do it, but they steam it so it becomes malleable, and then they shape it. So you've got this bent, beautiful bucket seat chairs that they've since replaced with plastic because it's just not duplicatable. Excuse me.
Well,
duplicatable.
Must have been a good trip. You've yawned.
Yeah, yawning still. I was up late on more than one occasion. And so going and seeing a Jackson Pollock, going and seeing a Monet, a Renoir, a Degas, Picasso's, and modern art from some of the greats.
You could call me a modified hippie, I guess, but I just, there's something about atmosphere. And for me, my favorite thing about going to a museum is since you can get so close to the paintings, even in paintings that are behind plexiglass, like the artist himself would have stood right where you're standing,
right,
3 feet away to step back to look at the painting. Even like that to me trips me out. Like it's not in the same building, it's not even in the same city, but proximity, atmosphere to these paintings. It's like the masters themselves were present in this current atmosphere of this painting. I don't have to touch it to get that same chill or that same
that they
vibe.
Stood where we're standing relative to the
where we're standing
piece.
And so that's just too cool. That's probably the main reason why I visit historical monuments or these museums, is just because I want to be where those minds have been.
That's exactly right. And the Monet that's there is a picture of, I think it's 3 houses on a bridge. Mm. And I don't know if I can somehow, maybe I can post it, but you can go to N.O.M.A, New Orleans Museum of of art and look and see the Monet that's in there. And it's just stunning, the brushwork and the colors, the color combinations and the use of the color wheel that Monet was a master at figuring out how certain colors contrast well
The
together.
yellows, purples,
You can
blues,
tell. I could tell
whites,
almost
yeah.
instantly. I'm looking through the room. I knew there was a Monet in there, and I looked at it. I'd never seen that painting before, and I knew right away that that was the one because of just his use of the color wheel. And to stand back from it from a distance. And some people don't like Impressionist art. Personally, I wasn't a big fan of the Renaissance and the early Renaissance and the Baroque art. And for anybody, Renaissance art, well, Baroque is two-dimensional, and you can see it. You recognize it. It's literally you're looking at a single plane, and Renaissance art starts to add that third dimension and perspective and shading and color and shadows and those types of things. So I'm not a big fan of the fine art so much. Really like modern art, and I love the Impressionists, and including, although from a timeline perspective, Picasso was considered in the Impressionist era, he did Cubism, he came up with his own stuff, he did grossly inappropriately proportioned portraits.
And the thing that fascinates me the most about Picasso is that it's less, you know, it's less about the art that he did, because let's be honest, like anybody, you know, most people can do what Picasso did. Like you can do a sketch line and you can put the eyeballs in the wrong place and stuff. The thing about it is that he was emerging in his world. He would have been emerging technology. Like he was emerging.
Yeah.
He did something
And he was a
for the
phenomenal
first time.
draftsman and sketch artist.
And he did something for he went out of that box for the first time, which led the way for the others to also go out of the box.
Correct.
But anyone, and that's why I think that people get a little hung up with going to museums or art or whatever, is they'll see like a big red dot and they'll be like, well, why is that art? It's not about the fact that it's a big red dot. It's about the fact that for the first time, a person put a big red dot on a canvas.
Yeah.
And changed the world because they did something for the first time.
Yeah. Gerhard Richter was the first guy to put a bunch of paint and then scrape it in a straight line, and you get those wiggly lines of chunk paint with it's oil paint.
Yeah.
It's chunk. It looks like it's almost done with a palette knife, but it's actually scraped. And I've got a whole book of his that I just love, and there's something captivating about it, even though it doesn't mean anything.
No.
It might have a name, you know, Gray Painting Number 7. Or whatever it is.
Well, it's like, and we're going to talk also, because I want you to also to share about the music scene, but like when you think of Glenn Miller and you think of Les Paul and you think of Louis Armstrong, these were all people who were looking for a sound. There was a sound that they had in their mind. And just like Coppola talks about with the Vincent van Gogh having a yellow, right? Like there was a yellow that Vincent had in his mind, and he wasn't going to rest until he found that yellow, that shade. There was a sound that Glenn Miller heard in his mind that he had to find, and then he needed to find it, and he wasn't going to rest until he found it. And so it's awesome when you can open yourself up to the arts, when you can open yourself up to music. And New Orleans is a location. Tell me a little bit about all of it, because you actually sat and you talked to people from all over the world.
Yeah. we met a couple from Germany, barely spoke English at all. I met people from Mexico, Netherlands.
And is there anything
couple of folks
like
from
New
Africa.
Orleans anywhere
No,
else
they
in
all
the
said,
world?
when I asked the couple from Germany, you know, where do you go in Germany? And I used Google Translate to get it. Where do you go? Nine. There's nothing. They just said, no, we have to come to the U.S.
And you have to go to, but
and we have to go to New Orleans, because there's no city like this anywhere. There's no town anywhere like this in Europe. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but they seem to believe that was the case. So
enough so to have to I mean, it's a considerable cost. We know what it costs to go from here to Europe, and then from them for them to come.
And it seems like you would think that in today's day and age that there would be jazz clubs in every city and town, and the truth is, it seems like they're almost a novelty at this point. That live quartet jazz, and when I think of jazz, the kind of jazz that we're talking about, it's not big band, right?
No.
You can go see big band jazz at Lincoln Center.
Symphony halls.
You can go. There's places in New York with $40 cocktails that you can go to listen to big band jazz live, and it's good. It's good stuff. I mean, we saw Wynton Marsalis at Stanford a couple of months ago. So it's great to see the big band jazz, but I'm talking about a piano player, a drummer, and a trumpet, or a piano player and a clarinet player, or a piano player with a trombone and a trumpet and a drum and a bass player. 4 and 5 piece jazz bands, and to see them just one after another in bars right next door to each other,
and
one after
extremely
another.
talented.
And they're all really
extremely
good.
Talented.
And there's one place I went. If anybody gets a chance, if nobody's ever been to New Orleans, which I'm finding a lot of people that have never been to New Orleans, and you gotta want to go there because it's an hour and a half from any major hub airport.
I think you
Houston.
went to Houston.
Yeah, you can go to Houston, you can go to Denver, you can go to Dallas, you can go to Kansas City, you can go to Miami, but it's not close to really any other major hub where you connect from an airline perspective. And you go there, and there's Fritzl's, which is on Bourbon Street. It's the only jazz club on Bourbon Street, which is ironic. But, there's a cowboy bar, and there's other bars that play hip-hop, a lot of dance clubs. Then you go to Frenchman Street, and there's Three Muses and Black Cat. And then there's also the Mahogany Hall, which is that's to the west of Bourbon Street, and I think it's on Camp, 1 block off Canal. So, and these have 3 and 4 and 5 part jazz bands that play 90-minute sets, and then there's just another band that comes in, and another band that comes in, and another band that comes in. Fritzl's is open from 12 noon until 2 in the morning, and they will have 5 or 6 bands that come in a single day. And you can sit there, if you buy 1 beer per set, and listen to the best jazz music in the world over and over and over and over and over with all fresh stuff for 12 hours a day in one bar. And all the bars are like that. And it's just a very unique place. And then on top of that, you've got the food, which is insanity. I think the first day I was there, there's a place called Ruby Slippers. And for breakfast, I had cheese grits cooked with a reduced butter glazed rosemary reduction sauce and shrimp with real buttermilk biscuits made right there that day. And I asked the gal, I'm like, this place is slammed. And it was slammed on, a Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And you have to wait, 11, 12, 1. And it's in an urban area, so there's certainly enough conference business to make that. But I'm like, they had another restaurant 4 blocks down the street, another Ruby Slippers, also slammed at the same time in the middle of a midweek post-breakfast rush, post-lunch rush. How did they do it? And she said, well, we got a guy back there making biscuits all day, every day. These grits are made fresh every morning. These shrimp were caught yesterday or day before.
Yeah.
Nothing's frozen. And we just made a decision to so there's a plug for Ruby Slippers, right? But I actually drew.
All I know is I'm hungry.
Yeah. Oh, so good. And then the next day I went back and I had candied bacon. And what did I have the second day for food? Oh, some kind of. Oh, I had fried chicken Benedict with gravy.
Wow.
That was incredible.
We've been talking a lot this month at our church on the journey, on going, on getting out of the house, on travel, on just feeling that pull to be exposed. We've been talking here on the podcast about allowing yourself to experience new things. And I found it interesting that when you came back and you were relaying about your trip, we have we had a restaurant that we've been to multiple times that you remembered, in your memory as being this almost romanticizing, and you were really looking forward to going. But you found this time that it wasn't what you remembered. And so then that put you into the position to where, well, do I want to keep going to what's comfortable and what's familiar? Or in this case, I'm going to try new places. I'm going to go to do new things. And so I think that is very telling of your personality. I think it's very telling of who we are as a couple and as a family. Like you tried going to what you were familiar with.
Yeah, I did. I went to a bar on Frenchman Street that was my favorite place before.
Yeah.
And I'd seen a band there that I really, really liked.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my first experience with, you're in New Orleans, you're going to go out, you're going to see this place. And the first band was just incredible. His name is Luke Winslow King. And he doesn't play Frenchman Street anymore because he only plays big venues. He's gotten really big in the last 7 or 8 years. And I think he moved to, I think I asked the proprietor there if and she's like, he doesn't even live in the U.S. anymore. He's like over in Europe touring,
That's awesome.
Doing great, and has a home base in Portugal or something. But Luke Winslow King, if you're interested in great jazz music, he plays national guitar with a real tinny sound. It's perfect for jazz and blues. But I saw him on Frenchman Street at a bar there in 2015, met him and talked with him a little bit right before he blew up. And I went back to that same bar, and it was okay. It wasn't phenomenal. I won't mention the name of the bar, but you'll find it. It's on Frenchman Street. But there's nothing wrong with the bar. It was just that my experience had a really high level of expectation because it was so great the first time.
And so it's interesting because this time...
Mahogany and Fritzels are fantastic.
I was going to say, this time you didn't even go to Café du Monde, which is one of our favorites, and shout out to Café du Monde, the best beignets ever.
Du Monde.
You did Du Monde.
Yeah.
You didn't get a
Café
chance
du
to go
Monde
to
was
Café
great.
du Monde, but you went to, so you ate at all brand new restaurants. You stayed in brand new
hotels, brand new restaurants, and brand new
hotels,
clubs.
new restaurants,
Yep.
new clubs. The whole 6 days was, other than the fact that you were returning to New Orleans because you've been there before,
Yep.
you were experiencing it again for the first
I only went
time.
to the one bar that I went to the one night was the one that I was talking about. Was the only place that I had gone back to. I didn't go to the World War II Museum. I went to 3 other museums. Didn't go to any of the hotels that we stayed at before. Didn't eat at any of the restaurants that we've eaten at before.
You took a bicycle and you saw the city.
Yeah, there's a
from
park.
different
If you
way.
look up the map of New Orleans, I'll tell you the place I stayed. Stayed at the International House over on Camp, a couple of blocks west of Canal Street. That was a great boutique. I got a deal on that one at on Hotwire. I think I paid $80 a night, and they got a Taylor guitar sitting on a guitar stand with a pick. So if I play guitar in this big hall in this gentrified bank building from the 1880s,
you played it.
this Beaux-Arts building, go look up the International House Hotel. It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
And stayed there for 2 nights. The other thing was I went with one bag. I went with a backpack.
Yeah.
So I'm going by myself. I wanted to see, could I live out of a backpack? Not even a suitcase, just a carry-on backpack for a week. So I had, let's just say I did some laundry in the sink
Sure.
a couple of times.
Well, as your granddad always used to said, half as much stuff, twice as much
Take half
money.
as much stuff and twice as much money. I stayed in the International House. And then if you like the more traditional Southern New Orleans style for hotel, there's the Bourbon Orleans was the name of the hotel, the Bourbon Orleans. And it's on Bourbon Street and Orleans Street. It's on the corner. That's a little bit more traditional. I actually really like the contemporary gentrified Beaux-Arts building for International House, but it's on the other side of Canal. So just go get yourself a map of New Orleans. You can look and see. They call it the Crescent City because of the curve. Crescent City Park, I rode my bike that was on loan in the lobby from the International House. So I didn't need to rent a car, and I got all over the city through Uber, bicycles, and walking all over the French Quarter.
So let's talk about the adventure aspect of this. Man. I mean, the whole you could probably subtitle this episode as Life's an Adventure. Now, while you were going through that, I recently picked up a book from the used bookstore because I was here at the house and you were gone on your trip. We call them walkabouts. I call them walkabouts because it's what the Aborigines do for the people of the tribe to find themselves. They go on their walkabouts, and we encourage highly meditative walkabouts regularly. I personally would like to be able to see us as individuals being able to go on walkabouts at least once a month. But if you can't, once every quarter, once every 3 months, once every 6 months, it's just important to go away and to reflect, to meditate, to quiet things down, see something new, go on these little mini adventures. And so I found this book at this. Well, you were on your adventure. I was here with the kids and doing my projects like I always do while you're gone. And Madeline wanted to go to a used bookstore. And so here in Campbell, California, where we are in Northern California, there's a bookstore. It sells new and used books, and it's across from Moe's. So we went to breakfast at Moe's, and then we went over to the bookstore. And in the bookstore, we're going through, Madeline was looking for a copy of Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And if you know psychology and logotherapy and all that stuff, you're familiar with Viktor Frankl. And on the shelf, there was a book that had recently been published in 2019 of his lectures from literally 3 or 4 weeks after his release from from the concentration camp, from the Holocaust survivor, that he had done these lectures in German. And so they found them, they translated them to English. It's the first printing. And the name of the book is Yes to Life. So just say yes to life.
Yep.
And what they learned from being Holocaust survivors, and there's this beautiful story in the very beginning about coming out of the concentration camps, living, and then like when they would get together, regardless of whether they had money or no money, they would put their nicest clothes on. They would put the music on. They would gather together.
And
they would
party
dance, and
have
they
fun.
would say yes to life, because if you don't say yes, I think that the impression was, what's the point of life if you get released from captivity and you don't say yes to it? So if we can live as post-prisoners, then you who have never experienced prison have more reason, more ability, more energy.
It begs
to be
the
able
question,
to say yes to
how could we not?
Exactly.
Never having been in a prison camp, never having been in a war, never having been in the military. Why? I grew up during peacetime. It was not a thing. I don't have parents who were in the military. My grandfather was in the military post-World War II. And my other grandfather was too old. He was too old for World War. I think he was too young for World War I and too old for World War II. So my grandfather
was in the Korean War.
Your grandfather was Korean War, and I think your grandfather on your mom's side was. He was in the military, but I think he was during peacetime. Yeah.
But he was
And I've had kind of wondered myself, like, hey, am I really doing everything that I can for my family and my country, not having served in the military? When you go to countries like Israel, where there's mandatory military service for everybody if you want to maintain your citizenship. So, but it's during peacetime. So you have to also be, I'm writing down takeaways in my mind that I've written on another piece of paper about my trip. One of them is you have to be relevant to the culture and the time that you're in. And we're not living in a time, we're in the post-industrial complex.
I've always viewed it as we're fighting a different battle, and that battle is on the home front.
The battle is on the home front.
And this generation, and helping to influence the next generation towards the arts, towards music, towards creativity, towards innovation.
Mental toughness and sticking stuff out and working through issues. Not because we think that people don't have issues or that there's something wrong if they do. Everybody's got issues. Everybody's got issues. But that there's a resolve that builds when you stay on a thing that you're working on and get through it. And in the life of instant gratification, it's a lot easier a lot of times to just give in to whatever the pressure is that's causing stress, versus saying, I'm going to stay determined. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit.
And you're not going to quit. And we were talking about that earlier, is that I think that we have fostered a generation of quitters. I think that unfortunately there have been a lot of opportunities for people to quit and still be able to eat, for people to quit and still be able to travel, for people to quit and walk away from marriages, walk away from jobs, walk away from school, and just quit. And I don't think that is what God has the best for us. I don't think that is what our or if everybody in society just upped and quit, then we would have, we would have socialism, we'd have communism, the government would have to take over because everybody just quit. And so what I'm finding is that when you are a winner and you are standing up and you are taking the hits and you don't ever quit, or that you can be transplanted, like circumstances around you, if you don't quit, they will change. Your where you are standing in is going to change.
If you don't quit,
when you don't quit,
the circumstances
absolutely will change. And so I don't know who I'm speaking to right now, if that's encouraging or not, but I'm here to encourage you to just don't quit, to stand strong, stand strong, not stall, but don't quit, and be open to those things changing around you. Because the environment, if the marble stays long enough underwater, the water around it will actually change.
Water wears the marble.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if that's Shakespeare or a proverb, but
yeah.
But much water wears the marble is
I think that the emphasis has always been on the marble changing, but the reality is the water changes too. The scenery, wherever it's pouring is changing.
The water takes the marble with it when it goes.
It's going to change, and the mountain's going to get taller, or the trees are going to bloom, like the seasons are going to, like things are going to change. So just don't quit.
And I'm reading. One of the things that I did is I took a book with me to read. I don't usually read literature. I've been reading self-help books forever, but eventually it's the same stuff over and over and over. So it's like, okay, I'm helped. I'm good. I'm ready to read something different. So so I took Hemingway with me, and one of the titles of one of his books is "The Sun Also Rises." And you think about the poetry in that. It's from Ecclesiastes. It's from a scripture in Ecclesiastes, saying that the sun sets and there's times of darkness, and the sun also riseth. King James, sun also rises, translated into modern English, saying that the sun does come out again. It also becomes day. It also becomes dawn. You also get to have illumination to the things that might be causing setbacks or issues in your life, and that everything, just live your life. We have an opportunity to live our life. We're doing this podcast because it's fun.
Yeah.
We're doing this podcast because it's enjoyable to create something for posterity that our children will be able to see. Oh, remember when mom and dad were in their mid 40s?
Yes, mid 40s.
Mid 40s, and
remember the crows that used to squawk?
Remember when the squirrels
would drop their nuts on the podcast?
Drop nuts on the metal roof.
It's like we are in the wilderness at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we're in our podcast booth, which Jessica has built inside of an aluminum detached 2-car garage that was erected on the property that we're currently in, and the aluminum roof on top sits right underneath a massive California oak tree. There's squirrels in there, and stuff falls off the tree, and it makes bang, bang, bang
Andrew's
noises.
Laughing.
Yeah,
it's funny because I was
busting up.
out here. Okay, so the last few mornings we have these massive oak trees, because the house that we're living in is from 1906. And so I'm very positive that these trees were either here before the house or they're massive. So there is all of this debris. There's all these dried leaves. There's all these acorns. There's all these things. Well, we have a second story, and there's this ledge outside the second story, and I'm in the room, and I'm like, oh my gosh. There's this, like someone literally has a broom, and they're sweeping. And I'm like, who is on the roof sweeping? And I look outside, and we have these little brown birds that they're pecking, and they're looking through all the leaves, but they sweep with their head. They sweep,
moving it.
Yeah, and they go, and I'm like, oh, you little devil, I'm like, oh my gosh, and so the other day when I was building the podcast room too, I hear the sweeping again on the roof, and I look out, and there's these birds just sweeping. But I'm sure that we can make a message out of anything. Like, the birds got to eat; they're gonna find the food. You can take adventures. You can say yes to life because you will find food. You will be provided for. It will all work out. The sun always rises. The bird always finds his nut.
Some people got there's a lot of people got laid off at work in the last couple of weeks, and I mean it's thousands of people, and they're flooding the marketplace now with great talent, hardworking, qualified people that are willing to work hard and do a great job at their next employer. And to be able to recover from that and be able to figure out, okay, what's the next thing going to be? These are real issues that impact people every day, looking for work, being happy at work. And there was something that you had read to me that Frankl talked about in the book, effectively saying that you're not going to be something about how the absence of pleasure doesn't take away from meaning, and neither does the
pursuing.
How did that go?
As pursuing pleasure doesn't add to your life.
Out of meaning. It doesn't add to meaning. Pursuing pleasure doesn't add to meaning, and neither does the presence of discomfort.
Neither does taking away pleasure doesn't remove meaning
from life. So there's going to be days where you may not be experiencing a very pleasurable situation, but it doesn't mean that your life doesn't have meaning. It doesn't mean that you can't find meaning.
It's not an addition-subtraction equation. There's not a balance. Many people look at life and they say, well, okay, so this many good things have happened to me, and so therefore this many bad things have happened to me, or this many bad things have happened to me, so therefore this many good, so I'm due for this many good things. And it's not an eye for an eye situation. There really is no score. We really do, I believe, when we say yes to life and yes to more experiences, that it is a domino effect, and that one yes leads to another yes, leads to it. Like you will more on the whole live a more adventurous, more fulfilling life the more things that you open yourself up to and don't say no to. However, that just like all of these good things, the pursuing of pleasure, the pursuing of happiness is not it won't give you much depth, I guess. It won't give you much meaning, because duty can be joyful, and the things that we do for work, that adds meaning, and it adds a richness, and it adds the oil, if you will, to the entree. You know, the butter makes everything better. You can make a meal, but if you don't add the butter, then there's not the depth that you're looking for in that flavor. And so duty and work and having something that you're building makes the depth happen in your life.
Yeah, and I want to take a moment to talk about self-care. Self-care can mean a bunch of different things. It can mean yoga, it can mean meditation, it can mean eating right or exercise or getting enough sleep. But this trip, I wasn't really committed to this trip until, I don't know what it was that
Michelle,
made me.
It was this podcast. It was the podcast that we had with Michelle.
That's right.
Shout out to learning from your own
learning
material.
from your own people, and your own friends. Yeah, we did a podcast a couple of weeks ago and with a friend, Michelle Trail, and there's a lot of things that she does to stay sharp. And so I was inspired by that, and I'd taken care, I think we'd cleaned up a couple of rooms in the house or something. And I just thought about, we're getting to the end of this fiscal year, and I just thought we'll be going through reorganization, and there'll be people losing their jobs and new territories, all this stuff. And I just needed a chance to decompress and get away. And I felt like I'd earned it. I mean, I put 15 months into this last role and was very committed. Nights, every night, every weekend, doing something every minute of the day to try to drive these deals forward. And we lost a couple of them, and a couple of them slipped, and a couple of them closed. And so we had what I felt like was just a really, really solid end to a very hard, very long, very disciplined fiscal year. And I just needed to get away and to be able to go to the pool, read my book, and wear comfortable clothes, go to bars and listen to music and talk to people and hear people's stories and drink beer and eat incredible food and take bike rides through the park. It was awesome. And what I realized from that was that I was not hypnotized into thinking that life is all about pleasure, and that meaning to life was to pursue relaxation and pleasure. But I did realize that I feel like I'd gotten hypnotized into thinking that I should just work all the time, every single minute of every day, that my family really should take a back seat. And certainly if you're going through financial issues and trying to build a business, there's just there's seasons in your life where you have to work. But to think that being all work all the time. I almost feel like nobody can relate to this, but I think there's a lot of people that work really, really hard out there, especially post-COVID, because for those of us that work from home means work all the time.
Yeah.
Work from home means you do not turn off. I, I was excited to maybe get out of the house and just go get some milk or
Yeah.
go get some cheese or macaroni and cheese or dinner
Well,
or something.
the Home Depot was open. So
Yeah, the Home Depot.
craft
Go-
stores
go to the
saw
craft
an
stores,
increase
just
in sales during
anything
that
I could do to get out of the house, man. I just was so tired of working every single minute of every day from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed with really not a whole lot of social interaction. And then all of a sudden, you're able to get kind of dehypnotized from that for a week and recognize that there's this whole other life with really cool people from all these different cities all over the world. And they're all coming to New Orleans for a week. And it costs some money. And we had to fork out some pretty significant bills for hotel stays and food. And I'm a cheap date. I don't eat too much. But the hotel stays and the plane ticket, it was a couple $1,000 for a week's worth of vacation for me to be on the road in New Orleans. But to be able to feel that sense of who I really wanted to be just my authentic self. And we don't need to get too touchy-feely for those men folk out there who, don't like talking about this kind of stuff. But I think if you could just wave a magic wand and say, this is the person that I wanted to be, I was that person for a week in New Orleans, unadulterated, totally free, having the best time of my life. And it made me
entire
pretty clear
experiences.
on what I need to do moving forward.
If you, they make entire experiences. For a week, you can go and you can do Laguna Seca, and you can rent they'll have motorcycle and they'll have drivers, and you can do NASCAR for a week. Like, they make trips for people who want to know what it feels like
To be a NASCAR driver.
Be a
or whatever.
NASCAR driver, or to be
Ferraris
in your
on a racetrack in
to
Vegas.
be somebody who has the ability to go and do these things. But this is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about saying yes to life. We're talking about taking those things from your someday maybe list and saying, what's stopping me from why is it someday maybe? Why is everything on my list someday maybe? Why am I stuck in someday maybe land when I've got savings in the bank, when I've got the ability to, so maybe I don't, fly, maybe I drive instead. Like, there are plenty of things that people put on their someday maybe lists that are easily
never get to them.
obtainable, that are easily achievable. And I remember, this is because this podcast is just as much for our children as it is for anybody in the public listening. I remember being broker than broke, ketchup stand on your tie, type broke, thinking about how good that burger used to taste, having no money to do anything with, but dreaming still about, for example, you always talked about wanting to own a private aircraft like your grandfather did at one point. And I, it's free for me to call the Citation company or to go on the website for Citation Airlines and get material. Like, that doesn't cost anything to get the brochures. So I'm going to go and I'm going to take this, someday maybe I'm going to get an airplane, and I'm going to move the needle just a little bit forward. We're not going to be able to, get the airplane today, but we're going to move the needle a tad forward, and I'm going to get you the brochure so that you can hold it, taste it, touch it, feel it. And so I highly encourage anybody to, if you could move the needle forward. And can you maybe explain, because we use that in everyday language, moving the needle forward. Could you explain what I mean? You'll be able to say it a lot better. What does moving the needle forward in getting closer to attaining that objective mean? Where's it come from?
You think about like the way I think about it is like a missile. If you have a plane that's going and you have a missile that you fire that comes out at that plane, and this psychocybernetics talks about this, the only change in course comes from recognition of a wrong turn. So the missile is predetermined to hit its target unless it makes a course correction because it realizes, oh, the target's moved over here and the missile's still going this way, so it needs to make a course correction. And that guidance system, we have an internal guidance system that says whatever we want, we focus on it, we go after it, we're naturally moving toward that target. And the only changes and course correction are made are based on negative feedback. Otherwise, the default is you're moving closer to your target. So when we think about moving the needle on a goal,
is it the needle of a record player? Is that where the
it's
concept comes from?
moving the needle on. I think it might be moving the needle on the compass,
Oh, I see.
or it could be moving the needle on the some kind of calibration. But it's a metric.
Yeah.
It's a metric of
You're
how am I
getting
doing?
closer.
How am I doing according to my goal?
So if you have a someday maybe list, for example, hey, someday maybe it'd be nice to go to New Orleans. Well, you know what? There's Cajun food restaurants around your neighborhood.
There's jazz clubs,
There's
probably
jazz clubs.
somewhere.
Somewhere. Like get closer. Get a taste of what it is
go
that
to
you're dreaming
Popeyes
about.
and get an extra spicy piece of Louisiana chicken.
Yeah.
And just taste it.
Just
Put on some jazz music. Get a Putumayo
yeah.
Branded, like those CDs.
I remember growing up, we'd go to the library and we'd get the Rick Steves travel guides on places that we would want to go. Like growing up, and I don't know if it was just a different time frame or a different culture, or maybe the internet has kind of robbed us of some of that going out and like researching places that you would want to go. Pastor Adam was talking about that. He was talking about how unfortunate it has become that everything is so accessible, because there used to be the trip was even involved in the going and getting of all of the information for the someday maybe trips.
That's right.
And now that we can just pull it up, I can pull up.
Yeah, we're our own travel agent.
I can pull up Rome on my YouTube, and I can see why do I go to Rome when I can watch a video on my phone about Rome and what Rome looks like? Because you have to experience, because part of it is the culture, part of it is the smells, part of it is how it tastes,
the food and the lighting. Food. The way that the lighting, I mean, Bourbon Street runs, for example, east and west, it's pretty close to east and west. And so the sun is going to come up in the east on the south side, and it stays and just bakes that street. And then it goes down, and once it goes down, all the fluorescent lights come on, and smells of all kinds of substances.
Well, it causes me to think about, like, there are sourdough starters, because big West Coast thing, especially San Francisco, is sourdough bread. Well, you can go in San Francisco and you can get bread that's made from the original sourdough starter
1700s.
From the 1700s. Like, you can go, when you actually go and travel to New Orleans, there are Cajun seasonings that somebody passed down to somebody who passed down to somebody who passed down to somebody who passed down to somebody.
There's a bar in New Orleans I went to that has live piano music every single day, 7 days a week. I think they're open at noon or 2. I think they're open at noon, maybe earlier. It's Jean Lafitte, and it is the house and blacksmith shop of Jean Lafitte, who was a legitimate pirate and racketeering guy who was pardoned by President Andrew Jackson in 1820. And this was his house. This was his house and blacksmith shop. And we're able to see the walls and touch the walls of this 200-plus-year-old building. It's supposed to be one of the oldest bars. It's the oldest bar in Louisiana by far. It's one of the oldest buildings in the South, and it's one of the oldest bars in the entire continental United States, with a few exceptions as far as like continuous use. It survived 2 major fires in New Orleans in the late 1700s and early 1800s that just decimated everything that was French and made out of wood, because Jean Lafitte had a tile roof and brick stucco walls, because he'd been to Spain and he saw what they did for fire retardant buildings were made with stucco and tile roofs. So he's like, that's how I'm going to make my bar. And it turns out this is the only building.
Everything burns down.
Everything else burns down around him. But this bar was literally where he did deals for racketeering and blowing people up, like blowing up British fleets. And you can go and there's a voodoo. There's the voodoo cocktail, which is like bright purple in a styrofoam cup with a straw. And you can listen to piano music. So that's a taste of history right there.
And when you expose yourself, when you go new places, go and open up you bring those experiences home with you, and now the thing that you've been doing every single day looks different. Now you begin implementing a different spice to your chicken that you've made the same every single day for the last 15 years.
That's right.
You've made, roasted chicken. Well, now you're going to start adding a new spice or a new flavor. You're going to be understanding what things look like. Maybe you look at your living room a different way. Maybe you look at your car a different way. Like, there are impressions that when we go out and we go and try things and experience things, that we just want to bring that home with us, and we want to be a part of. We want that to become a part of our life, and we are also leaving behind an imprint on that culture of where, like, it's a two-way street. It's not just you go and you take and you bring home. You're leaving your dollars and American dollars. You're leaving your whatever your culture is, whatever you bring, you're bringing to the table too.
And the memories that you make with the people you meet at the
And
bar.
the memories that you meet, and the connections that are created, and you're blessing everyone. And I think that we as human beings, we're called to leave our tent. We're called to leave our home. We're called to go
And
out.
be a light and
be a
shine
light
and try to improve people's lives.
And then when we come back and we bring that worldly life experience, I mean, I remember as a kid, whenever I'd have like an uncle or a cousin or somebody who went on to some like exotic trip to Ohio, like they went somewhere. Because when you're a kid, you don't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere. You just you go wherever your parents go. But when somebody would go someplace and they would come back and they would bring a little souvenir, or man, they smelled different. They looked different.
They brought shirts and candies and toys.
It's like they looked rested. They just, it was like, wow, so and so. I mean, when I grew up in my house, if somebody gone somewhere, and because you've been in my family long enough, if somebody went somewhere and they came back, we always had a welcome home dinner or something, like so and so's back, and it could have been the most ridiculous. Like, they went to
Kansas City.
They went to Kansas City for 3 days, but we haven't seen them in 3 days. So there's a reason to get together for family dinner. Yeah. So let's get together and we'll talk about the 3 days that you were gone.
That's right.
What'd you do? Where'd you go? What'd you see? And so that's what going out and doing does. In my opinion, it's not selfish.
You got to go see it. You got to go see the world. You got to live your life. So the takeaways that I had from the trip, and I'll list in the description down below on the video. I'll list all the places that I went and maybe see if I can upload some of the art that I did and looked at. But ultimately, self-care is a thing. It's got to be a priority for anybody that's super hardworking. And you don't work hard so that you can play hard. I think it's the other way around. I think you play and sharpen your axe so that you can be at your best the most amount of the time as possible. And I can tell you, I have not been at my absolute best for as much of my life as I'd like, because I just didn't treat self-care as the necessary element, and it really is. Meditation, one of the things I found that I had done in the early years where I made a huge progression in a couple of years was deep tissue, mental brain tissue meditation of an hour and a half every day. If you really want to get things working in the right direction, go get yourself some Bible scriptures or great books or great poetry, and just unplug in the morning. First thing, do yourself a solid of waking up early and reviewing your goals every day and having a petition. You and I have been working on a petition. We're still working on a petition by the end of this year. Weightlifting for those over 40 has made a big difference for me, and I need to stick with that. And then making art. One of the things on my list that I wanted to make sure and do was do pastel drawings, paintings, watercolors every day. Do some kind of art creation every single day. Yesterday I got back and cleaned the inside valves of my trumpet and put trumpet oil.
The grease?
Yeah, there's the grease for the slides, but then you got the oil for the valves, and then I replaced the guitar strings on my guitar, which I haven't done. So that represents a little tiny thing that I could do for self-care, because I've got new strings and a trumpet that's got valves that are oiled properly and easily fluid. It's going to encourage me to practice and play the music that I love as much as I do. Being proactive, that was something I definitely need to make sure that I do. Don't just let life happen to you. Figure out what you want. Take your 5-year goals, break them down into 90 days. What can I do in 90 days? Break those down into weeks and then break those down into what can I do each day. If you just do that, if you just take 5-year goals, break them down into what can I do in the next 90 days to get there, what can I do this week, and keep that with you. Darren Hardy has a great free Sunday evening planning session, which has been monumental in my ability to increase productivity and scale and leverage and focus throughout the week. You can go and look that up. That is free. You got to be relevant to the culture. And you can tell when somebody stops growing by what the clothes are in their closet. I thought that was so great. And I've got some clothes in there that have been in there for a few years. So I think it is time for me to go do some shopping and be relevant and age appropriate. And then listen to your audience. I spent a lot of time listening to a lot of people in bars and just hearing their stories and what they were doing and just seeing the signals of, like, are they early on their trip? Are they just about to go home? Have they had too much to drink? Are they enjoying themselves? Are they with their family or with their friends? Just getting a full picture of them from the things that they would share about their lives. And then you just, you got to go live your life. You're going to be dead someday. We talk about it all the time. I desensitize my kids to it, to talk about it so that they're prepared, so that they're ready when Jessica and I are no longer here to take care of them. This podcast is part of that legacy, and I hope it's 30, 40, 50, 60 years that we have left of life. But at some point, it's all going to be over. And so I don't want to get to that point without knowing that I lived my life and did the things that I wanted to do.
Well, you will never regret accomplishing something, checking something off of your someday maybe list. But you will always regret never going for anything on your someday maybe list.
Typically it's not the things you did that you regret. It's
Right.
typically the things you didn't do.
The things that you don't.
So
Well,
do
thank
it.
you, everybody. We hope that you've been encouraged by this message. We hope that you check some of those places out and some of those resources that Jeff has shared on his most recent trip to New Orleans.
That's right.
We are so blessed that you listened, that you shared, that you subscribed, that you like these videos, and keep encouraging.
And
each
put
week,
comments in. Like we want to hear feedback on what you guys are thinking.
each week
what you want
we
to hear more
see
about.
the ticker going up, more subscribers, more subscribers, more subscribers. And so, I think that when we get to 100 subscribers, we should do something. We should have a little, I don't know, we'll do something
Grape
special.
juice or something.
Yeah. Grape
Martinelli's.
juice. Martinelli's.
Sparkling cider. We'll get to 100 subscribers.
Get to 100 subscribers, and we'll think about it. We'll maybe the kids can come up with
That's right.
something fun.
Thanks for being with us on the Jeff Heilman Project, and we'll see you guys next time.
We love you, and have an awesome rest of your week.